this is the DC office of the Tenant Advocates webinar series, OTA from A to Z. I'm your host, Derek McGinty, and today we talk about housing code violations, specifically what you need to do if you feel your home is not safe or is perhaps causing you health issues, maybe you or your family. Our guest today, Steve Dudek. He is the Director of Outreach and Education for the OTA. And if you're not sure about your rights as a tenant, he is the man you want to talk to. Our other guest is Ferdinand Gamboa. He is Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs Property Maintenance Inspection Manager. He's also a duty officer at DCRA. He responds to emergencies like fires or collapsing buildings. Let's get this thing started, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having
us. Good to have you both here. I think most of us have heard the phrase, a building is not up to code. But the housing code's pretty much a mystery beyond that. Tell us a little bit about it, Steve. How does it work?
So the housing code is a statute that informs the landlord what they must have. On top of that, there's this implied warranty of habitability, which is in every landlord-tenant relationship in the district.
Warranty of habitability, what is that?
Yeah, which means the landlord must provide a safe, clean, habitable unit, both inside your unit and in the common spaces as well.
Sure. So we should understand that this does not mean that you might not have some carpet that's frayed or you might have your paints the wrong color. We're talking about serious health issues here.
Yep, and Mr. Gamboa is definitely the expert in that and sees everything from A to Z with housing code.
All right, well, you're on, Mr. Gamboa.
Yes, so the housing codes are established to protect the safety and conditions of the tenants in the District of Columbia. We adopt those laws and regulations so that we can require the landlords to protect and provide the safety and habitable conditions of the tenants.
All right, so give me some examples of maybe the top 5 housing code violations you're likely to see.
Sure, so a lot of times we recognize this code violation like no utilities, no water, no gas, no electricity in their units. Sometimes we have defective smoke detectors and infestations like mice, bed bugs, and rats.
Wow. Are most of these things that people report to you, or have you done inspections? How do you find out about these?
Well, we have 2 types of inspection. There are the complaint base, which we get from anybody, the tenants, citizens, and of course we also have the proactive, which we proactively go out there and look for code violations.
And you would think that in certain parts of the city, certain code violations would be more likely. Is that the case? Do they vary?
Based on our experiences, these housing code violations, they're across the entire city.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, they're consistent.
Okay,
Yeah.
regardless of the economic well-being of that particular neighborhood.
Regardless, you know what the reason why is because some of these buildings are old. So any building that are built before 1978, mostly they have this peeling paint infestations and deteriorating conditions.
So once you've notified a landlord about a situation, what happens then?
We give them reasonable time to abate or correct these code violations, and if they fail to abate, then we will move with the legal process.
Okay, so we can get back to that, but Steve, I know you want to...
Yes, and what I want to say, it's important for the tenant to document the conditions of the unit. And if they have any conditions in the unit that they want to run by the OTA, call us, because we want to make sure that they have the appropriate documentation. Because DCRA is only one of the first steps to do. You can contact them, they can come out and inspect. Unfortunately, sometimes the landlords don't adhere to DCRA's inspections and don't fix anything. So we talk to the tenants how to protect their rights, as well as whether they should be withholding their rent or not.
All right, now that raises any number of other questions that we have to get to. First of all, let's say, for example, the landlord doesn't do what you've told him to do. Does the tenant need to call you again? What's the process?
What's the process is first, if you see something wrong in your unit, call us. What we're going to inform you is take pictures, inform the landlord through writing, text messages, emails, and then you have 3 major options. First one is contacting DCRA and have Mr. Gamboa and his team come out and inspect the unit. If they come out and inspect and the landlord doesn't adhere to the inspection, then we elevate the response. and that would include filing a complaint in housing conditions calendar, which is a branch of the DC Superior Court that only focuses on housing code issues.
Okay, this is starting to sound complicated.
Yeah.
Will the OTA help a tenant walk through this process?
Definitely, and that's what we're here for. So if you call the hotline, we'll definitely tell you step by step what you need to do. If you need assistance filing a complaint in housing conditions calendar, we'll set up an appointment where you can come in and we can walk through that complaint with you.
All right, Ms. Gamboa, I'm curious about what are some of the violations that are the most dangerous for tenants? What do you tend to see that can really put a person's health at risk?
Absolutely. So a lot of times we get a call about sewage backup when the entire unit are swamped with a lot of feces, sewage, then we may have to call OTA to put them in a hotel.
Yeah, now that just sounds like a nightmare situation.
Yes, absolutely. So you can passively imagine you cannot live in that type of situation.
No, no. So if a tenant has a situation that's that threatening, do they have the right to not pay the rent?
So different agencies differ on whether tenants should withhold their rent or not. The OTA does not advise tenants to withhold their rent for two reasons. One, if you withhold your rent, you run the risk of being evicted because you're technically not paying your rent and the landlord may take you to landlord-tenant court. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can raise the housing code as a defense. However, landlord-tenant can be very emotional and you may not have the right evaluation of your property and the diminution of your value. The second thing is we've seen tenants who withheld their rent, won in the landlord-tenant court based on their defense, but then lost when they looked for future rental housing property. Because what happened is other landlords see that the landlord took you to court for non-payment of rent. And I've worked with clients who had a great credit score around the high 700s, low 800s, and were denied housing because the landlord took them to landlord-tenant court for non-payment of rent.
And I'm sure the tenant's thinking, well, then what the heck am I supposed to do? I mean, I'm in a situation here where my apartment is just barely livable or not livable, and I don't have much armament to fall back on.
Yep, so you still can take the landlord to court to get a rent abatement. So if you violate, if the landlord has poor conditions in your unit, that's a violation of that implied warranty of habitability, which transfers or converts into a breach of contract. So they could file a complaint in small claims court, which is like Judge Judy without the TV cameras, and be able to get their money back based on the severity of the housing code issues.
Okay, let's go to the other side. The landlord might say, these tenants we were in some sort of emotional dispute because it often gets very emotional, and they've called DCRA to just as a means of getting back at me. Does that happen?
Oh, absolutely. So they're using DCRA to make sure that the landlord provide them the habitable space that they require to. So we take them to legal process if they fail to abate those corrections.
Right, but suppose the violations are very small, and the landlord again is being attacked by the tenant who is angry about something else entirely.
So the tenant has the right to contact DCRA to schedule an inspection. If they call DCRA out of spite to get back at the landlord, DCR will reach out to the landlord to make sure that there are these housing code issues that the tenant is talking about. And when they do the inspection, they'll either say, no, everything looks great, or they'll cite the landlord if there's any infraction.
Do you do anything to sort of mediate these disputes between landlords and tenants so it doesn't end up in court?
We try to. We try to avoid court at all costs because when you're in court, you don't have a say in the settlement or in the outcome.
And it's more expensive for everybody.
It is. It is more expensive, and it's a lot time consuming. And so most tenants and landlords don't want to be in court because it's not just a one-day thing. It may be multiple days where you come for the initial hearing and then you go to mediation. And then if you don't resolve in mediation, you have an evidentiary hearing as well. And it's just more time that you're in court where you're not with your family or at work as well.
Do you have any ideas about why a landlord would allow their apartment building to become run down and violate these rules? It seems to me that it's not in their interest to have a broken down building either.
I think it can be expensive for landlords, especially the small landlords that are not in tune on how expensive it can be to upkeep their property.
The other problem that they're encountering is it's either way. Either the tenants are not also paying the rent. It's a catch-20, meaning you don't pay rent, they don't have any money to make repairs.
Wow.
So it's both parties.
All right, so everybody's got to work together to make
Yes.
sure the building stays under code.
Yeah.
Let's talk about making a home healthy, because there are some conditions that are principles of a healthy home.
So based on my experience, healthy home is supposed to be dry, clean, pest-free, infested, contaminant-free, and well ventilated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So are those things that are codified in the code, or are they things
Yes, they are in the code. They are ought to be followed by any landlords or any rental properties.
All right. We've also got some questions here from people that asked the OTA about those housing code violations. Question number one here: can DCRA impose any fines on my landlord if I have to schedule a second inspection because the landlord didn't fix anything after the first inspection?
Currently, we do not impose fines in the first inspections. We normally give the landlord time to abate those code violations. However, in the near future, we can go straight to notice of infraction, meaning we don't have to go back the second time. We go straight to notice of infraction.
How much time does the landlord get?
Normally, there are two types of code violations. There's a life safety, which are life-threatening to occupants. We give them 1 day to abate those, yes.
Really?
Right.
Give me an example of what would be a life-threatening code violation.
No smoke detector, collapsing ceiling, collapsing roof.
1 day.
1 day,
Okay.
sewage backup. They're supposed to be taken right away, immediately. And then the routine code violations are peeling paint, faucet not working. Those are minor mice infestations. So those are routine maintenance. We give them at least 30 days.
Okay, so you go from 1 day to 30 days.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Question number two here is: if I have no running water in my apartment, what should I do? Steve?
You should definitely call the OTA so we can explain the different options that are available to you. One of the first options would be calling DCRA for an emergency inspection. And what we haven't mentioned yet is DCRA has the authority to close the building down. So if they come in and view that the unit is uninhabitable, they have the right to close the unit down, which then they will contact us and we will provide emergency housing to the tenant, which is a 14-day stay in a hotel.
Now, it would seem to me that once you close a building down, that's mutual assured destruction. There, the tenant's out and the landlord's not getting paid. Does that ever happen and there's regret? Like, I didn't want it to go this far.
Yes, we get a lot of tenants when we say you can call DCRA, but DCRA does have the authority to close the unit down, that they're very reserved and they may want to live in the conditions.
Right.
And we assure them that you do not want to live in those conditions, that you want to go through the options, because when DCRA closes the unit, now the government is in to see whether the unit is going to be repaired, or if they're going to have to condemn the building, knock it down, and hopefully build a new building that can house tenants.
But again, if I've only got 14 days of a place to stay,
Yes.
and I don't know where I'm going to go after that, like I say, that's a nuclear option.
Yes, yes. And so the other options would be to take the landlord to housing conditions calendar and file a complaint there and have them talk to the judge to why they're not keeping the building in good condition.
Mr. Gamboa, how often does it happen that DCRA actually has to close a building down? How often does it go that far?
Normally, sometimes it's every 2 weeks, we come across with conditions that are not habitable, so we end up shutting them down, like sewage backup, sometimes every week, especially on rainy seasons.
Has the situation changed at all with the changes in the DC housing market?
It does. So it depends on the age of the building too, and it depends on the maintenance of the property owners.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about question number 3. Does DCRA deal with housing units that have a mold problem?
Currently, yes and no. Yes, we do go out and inspect the cause and growth of the mold, like the leaks or dampness in the premises. However, currently we do not enforce the mold code violations, but in the near future, we have a proposed plan to enforce the mold condition.
And why don't you enforce it now?
Right now, our staff are not trained and we're not educated on mold, and we don't have the tools and resources.
Because mold's been around as a problem for a while now, Steve.
Yes, mold is always a problem. Mold is what we consistently see at the OTA. And so if you find mold in your unit, visible mold, call us so we can explain the statute. We can also talk about what DCRA can and can't do. And when we talk to the tenant, we always inform them to find the source of it, because if you find the source of it, that's the best way to eradicate the mold.
If I'm a tenant and I think there's a problem, but I'm not sure, can OTA or DCRA come and just let me know what I'm dealing with?
Yep, so I would say call OTA first because we don't want to overburden DCRA since they're always busy. So call OTA, talk to one of our case managers and attorneys, and we'll say, yeah, maybe you should wait, or yes, you should go ahead and schedule an inspection with DCRA.
But go ahead.
We also are great customer service when we take the complaints either from the OTA or from the citizens and do a triage between the tenants and the landlord, see if they can fix it among themselves before we even go on inspection.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. Shouldn't people first go to the landlord to try to work it out?
Always, always. That's the first step, is always go to the landlord because they need to be aware of the situation. You can't hold the landlord accountable if you don't make them aware of the situation.
Is there any concern on the part of tenants that they don't want to escalate it? Because, once you go to the government, then it's in a whole different ballpark, isn't it?
Yes and no, but usually when the tenants are contacting us, it's because the landlord hasn't done anything for the 2 weeks, a month, even 5 months. So usually when they're contacting us, it is a length of time that no action has been taken.
If there's one thing you want tenants to know about their rights when it comes to housing code violations, what would that be?
I think the first thing is that, again, that implied warranty of habitability, that you have a right to a safe, clean, habitable unit, both inside your unit and in the common spaces. And so if you are concerned that is being violated, immediately call us so we can talk about contacting your landlord. We can talk about documentation, and we can talk about the great services of DCRA.
One final thing from you at all?
Yes, so just to make sure that tenants know that they do deserve a habitable and livable condition because they pay the rent. So they deserve to be treated.
I think that's a perfect ending. Ferdinand Gamboa, DCRA Property Maintenance Inspector, Inspection Manager. He's also a duty officer at DCRA. And my other guest is Steve Dudek, Director of Outreach and Education for the OTA. I want to thank you both. Great conversation, a lot of really good information.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of information, if you want to know more, you can contact the OTA online at ota.dc.gov by the telephone 202-719-6560, Monday to Friday, 8:45 a.m. to 4:45 p.m., or just stop in at 2014th Street Northwest, suite number 300, Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if you've got an emergency or you need to call DCRA with something about housing inspections, the hotline number is 202-442-9557. This has been OTA A to Z. I'm your host, Derek McGinty, and we'll see you next time.